Namaste. Let's continue on now with the 40 essential virtues. We're ready for control of the sexual impulse, physically and mentally, and preservation of the sexual energy. Well, I think we all know what this is all talking about. But it also means you don't skirt along it and you don't talk it. There are a lot of people who think that if they talk filthy, they're not being filthy, but they are. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Therefore, this means absolute purity in thought and in word and in action, and the avoidance not just of inappropriate action, but inappropriate appearance. We should be careful who we're seen with. We should be careful with those we deal with. So you can't control it if you don't keep it off to the side where it belongs or push it back. You don't deny that it's there. You don't lie to yourself, but you just say nothing doing. Now, what do? You put something in its place. It's a thought. It's japa of a mantra. If you fill your mind with the vibrations of a sacred mantra, your mind is filled with sacred vibrations, and ultimately, through your prolonged practice, those things won't even approach your mind. Now, that's a ways down the line, but understand that can happen. But never be foolish and think, oh, when I used to go around those dirty talking and living people, I used to be kind of pulled toward it, but now I'm all right. I'm strong. I'm established. I'm safe. That's setting yourself up for a fall. That's the truth. Just repressing is not eliminating. That's one thing we must remember. But you see, also people also waste their energies in hating or obsessing, and then also thinking about things like this. My Aunt Faye, my wonderful Aunt Faye, knew a woman who had all kinds of obscene pictures. This is way back in the early 1940s. And somehow she saw she had this. Well, Aunt Faye didn't say anything about it. But then she saw the woman was, I guess instead of being a skirt chaser, a trouser chaser. And she said, well, after all, it's just, the way a person's made. And Aunt Faye said, oh, no, it isn't. You feed that. That's a parasite in your soul. And you feed it by those pictures. And you feed it by the kind of people you associate with. So it isn't natural, though you'd like to pretend it's natural. You create it. We have to accept responsibility for that. I don't think one of the things here says being an adult and acting a grown up, but we do need that also in moral life. Okay, fine. Non-accumulation, just getting stuff. Obsession with stuff, because that's true. You could maybe not have it, but if you think about it all the time and wish you had it, you create a karma which then in the future will force you to go get that. Beware of that. So, just there are some people, they're not satisfied if they don't have three of everything. I had a very, very good friend. She said, I've got a cousin that has at least two, but usually three of everything. When she got married, she had three toasters. She had three waffle irons. She had three irons and a couple of ironing boards, and she said it went on and on like that. Tremendous amount of her space in her house was was occupied by having two and three of something. Of course, this no doubt comes from a previous life where the person was greatly deprived and didn't have these things that they felt they needed. So we also need to be sympathetic, but understand that for ourselves at least, let's not become, because that's an addiction too, you see, stockpiling, feeling safety by that. We can do it with money. We can do it with many other, any kind of physical object. So it means also living simply and not with a lot of stuff we don't really need, things that are not necessities at all. I don't mean we have to live just in a bare bone manner, but meaning there's really no need to keep getting a softer and softer sofa or armchair. And the new fall colors have come in. Let me get another rug. This is slavery, of course. So part of non-accumulation is being the master of material possessions. Doesn't mean you don't have them, but you're in control. All right. Purity. Purity, of course, means morality, but much more than that. It means being free of all that fogs the mind. You see, if there was a big dust storm or something, the window I'm looking out of there, it could become all uh, opaque with a lot of dried dust and dirt and so on it. And so clarity is part of purity. Purity of mind is clarity of mind. And it's not having it clogged by, even if it's utterly moral things. There are people who, again, they are just obsessed with just distractions. An undistracted mind is very important, and that's a pure mind. So, Shuddha, purity, is not just moral, it's also freedom from what is unnecessary or distracting. Fine. Santosha, he doesn't say it there, but I read. Contentment. It means being inwardly satisfied because the self is actually the only thing that will ever fully satisfy. And it means, now there's nothing wrong with saying, I need a new lawnmower. Nothing at all. But also, just thinking the people next door have got a bigger one and I don't like it, I want a big one like they have. No. It means being satisfied with what you have and understanding that what is sufficient is just that it suffices, and any desire for something beyond it is a problem, a difficulty for you, a flaw, and you at least don't feed it and you don't give in to it. Because there are people, if they see your car's 3 inches longer than theirs, they want one. Or it's more less, maybe it's a compact car, it's less. But this is just having what you have, using it, and you let it be. Indifference has a lot to do with it, many of these things. But positive indifference, not just an absence, but a recognition that of what matters and does not matter. All right. Discipline. Discipline undergone for the correction and the purification of the individual. Discipline in everything, every point of life, saying what is useful, what is intelligent, what is needed, what is helpful, And what is not addicting, because possessions become addicting. They can't let go of them. I think I've told about my Aunt Ethel, but I'll tell about it again. Aunt Ethel is a wonderful person. Aunt Ethel knew that some descendants of Sir Francis Drake, the very famous suitor of Queen Elizabeth, who also built up the British Navy into a great power. Well, she was living in a little 200 population town in the middle of Illinois, but some of Sir Francis Drake's relatives lived there. Very, very rich people. Lots of land, lots of all kinds of assets, business, so on. And they lived in this very wonderful mansion. And occasionally, if they had difficulties with help or they needed extra help, she would call up my Aunt Ethel and say, "Look, would you come help me for this and so on?" And Aunt Ethel would say, "Sure, of course I will." So one time, Aunt Ethel was helping out in the kitchen, of course, one of these huge mansion style kitchens. And Mrs. Drake came in with a sweater. Now, Aunt Ethel had seen that sweater and she knew that Mrs. Drake did not like it. She did not like the color and wished she hadn't bought it, but she did. And so she came bringing it in and she was looking at Aunt Ethel. And Aunt Ethel thought, ah, she's planning to give me that sweater. But there were a few steps down into the kitchen, and Mrs. Drake stayed there at the top of the steps, looking at Aunt Ethel, and then looking down at the sweater, up at Aunt Ethel, down at the sweater, up at Aunt Ethel. And then finally, she just sort of convulsively just grabbed onto it, turned around, and literally ran out. She could not bring herself to give something she didn't even want. That's a very, very serious psychological and emotional condition. But people have that. To where Sri Ramakrishna said, this is a very homely example I'm going to tell you. He said there are people that wouldn't urinate on a certain spot on the ground if you ask them to because they're afraid it will benefit you. And there are people even like that. They not only don't want to give you any things, they don't want to do anything that will help you along because they're enslaved, you see, and they have no Santosha, they have no contentment and security. They should be felt sorry for, but I wouldn't go around them very much. But let's go a little bit more. He says, even hardships undergone for the discharging of one's religious or spiritual obligations. Well, we often don't want people to think ill of us. So they say, "Oh, would you like a beer?" And you say, "No, no, thank you." Well, they got some wine. I mean, they mean well. You have to say, "No, I never drink alcohol." Now, if they're insecure, they, of course, will supposedly feel intimidated by you saying that, but that's their fault and that's their problem, not you. So you say it. So if someone says, "Oh, I'd like you to go this and that place with me," and you say, "No, I don't go to places like that." And you're not being a Pharisee, you're being honest, and frankly, you're being decent. So oftentimes we do go through discomfort, embarrassment, yes, even hardship, because we have principles that we will not violate. And that's part of this tapasya. For example, I read not too long ago, but of course my forgettery is remarkable. Um, yes, there was a man. This would be in England in days when everything went by carriage, by so-called post uh, vehicles and so on. And there was a man there. I think it was Jonathan Edwards, a very holy man, and he walked everywhere he went because the horses were beaten unmercifully and underfed, and the people that worked at each post, such as stable boys and so on, were treated also cruelly, not given the right wage, and lived in a miserable way. So he would not do business with such people. So it means things like that. It may be inconvenient to not buy a certain brand because you know the people who run the business are doing something dishonest, or again, abusing the people that work. So anything that violates your principle, you don't do it. And if you don't read if you don't read, say, a dirty book, and if your neighbor would like you to take a dirty book to loan to the friend, you don't take the book. It's natural for human beings to not want to be thought ill of by others, but when you think about it, it never does you any harm. So, therefore, this aspect of tapasya is very, very important. Regulating your life and, yes, undergoing inconvenience because there's freedom in your heart, freedom in your intentions. You want to be free. How can you be free if you let yourself be controlled by things or other people? It's just quite simple when you consider it. We'll say namaste there and take up the rest of the list next time.